Rob Manfred and Tony Clark have met face-to-face in Arizona. Major League Baseball has proposed a deal consisting of 60 games, full prorated pay for players, expanded playoffs in 2020 and 2021, no grievance in exchange for all of that, no grievance by the Players Association because there's an agreement. Manfred issued a statement saying that they have jointly developed framework that he and Tony Clark would take to their respective sides to move forward. Andy, what more can you add, and what's the expectation in terms of how close we are to an actual agreement here?
Well, a couple things. It sounds semantic, but MLB actually, as source I was talking to, wanted to make a distinction between a proposal and framework, whereas MLB doesn't actually believe that they've necessarily made a new proposal, but that Clark and Manfred mutually sat in a room and discussed what the framework could look like on a season. How is that different? It means they didn't just email them a new proposal. It means that what we're getting today, all the details that you just read out, Doug, and many more, are a result of a conversation. So you would hope that they continue on the same page. One concern that I have, small concern that I have, is that the players' side, I'm hearing from a lot of agents that still say 60 games is not enough. And the way MLB, I believe, would think of it is, come on, Tony and Rob just hammered out 60 games in a room. What do you mean it's not enough? So that's something that probably has to be worked through a little bit still. There's some ways to go before they both feel good about that.
The framework, it sounds very similar to everything that the players had already proposed, just less games. It's almost identical. You've got the playoffs, expanded for this year and next year, prorated salaries. Those were the main points that everyone was talking about. I think there's still a little bit more to be hammered out. I found it kind of funny in Manfred's, statement that first line, I think, was at my request. Tony and I got together. So he's really trying to claim responsibility for this, but it's hilarious because it's the exact same framework that the players has already sent over several times.
It shouldn't go unnoticed that they met face-to-face. I think there's a different dynamic when you meet somebody face-to-face. I think even these guys that are representing a lot of other people, when they're in a virtual meeting and there's people kind of giving input all the time, I think sometimes things have a tendency to get hammered out face-to-face. I think that's probably why Rob was very adamant about the fact that, hey, I said, let's meet together face-to-face. I think that's the way things get done. As far as the framework, I think, as Anthony said, it's not very different from what was already proposed. And I think to the players, that ought to feel a little bit like, hey, our bluff worked at some level. Calling your bluff, I should say, it wasn't really their bluff. Calling the owner's bluff worked because it went from, hey, just we're gonna implement a season, and the players saying, all right, tell us when and where, to now they've moved to just 48 games, 54 games, now it's 60 games, maybe it ends up at 66. All of it is a move in the direction of ownership, which is a bit of a victory, if you will, for the players.